Hey everyone, quick thing before we dive in. I was looking at my analytics and it turns out most of the people watching aren't actually subscribed. See this? Way more views than subscribers. If you're enjoying the videos and want to see more, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and you'll never miss new uploads. Alright, let's get into it.
I first met Alessa Gillespie 6 months before the fire. She was brought to Alchemilla Hospital with a fractured wrist, a playground accident according to the chart. But I'd worked in pediatrics long enough to recognize the signs, the hesitant way she answered questions, the way her eyes tracked adults in the room, the older bruises in various stages of healing beneath her school uniform. My name was Sylvia Weaver. I was 24, barely a year out of nursing school, working the pediatric ward at Alchemilla. "Does it hurt anywhere else, sweetheart?" I asked her that first day, keeping my voice gentle as I wrapped her slender wrist in a bandage. Her dark eyes met mine, unnervingly direct for a child of 7. It always hurts somewhere. I documented my suspicions of abuse in her chart, flagged it for the attending physician, Dr. Michael Kaufman, the hospital's director. He dismissed my concerns with barely a glance at my notes. "The Gillespies are an old family in Silent Hill," he said, his voice clipped and professional. "Very private, very religious. I'd advise against making unfounded accusations." I should have left it there. Should have recognized the warning in his tone, but something about Alessa's eyes stayed with me, the quiet resignation in them, as though she already knew no help was coming. I made discreet inquiries about the Gillespies, about their church, not the one most of Silent Hill attended, but a smaller, more secretive congregation that met in an old building on the edge of town. People called them the Order in Whispers, then changed the subject when pressed. 2 weeks after Alessa's visit, she returned with her mother. Not for medical attention this time, but to deliver something to Dr. Kaufman. I was at the nurse's station when they walked past, Dahlia Gillespie, a woman with wild red hair and eyes that burned with fanatical intensity, pulling Alessa by the hand. The girl saw me. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw a silent plea in hers. I followed them at a distance, watched them enter Kaufman's office. Then, breaking every rule of professional conduct, I listened at the door. Their voices were low, but I caught fragments. "Preparations are nearly complete. The fluoros has been assembled, requires more of the white Claudia extract. My daughter is ready for her role." Then Alessa's voice, small but distinct. "I don't want to, Mother." The sharp crack of a slap. Then silence. I hurried back to my station before they emerged. When they passed by again, Alessa's cheek was red, her eyes downcast. But as they reached the exit, she looked back at me. Just once. That night, I documented everything I'd seen and heard in a letter to Child Protective Services in Brahms, the neighboring town. I included dates, times, my observations of Alessa's injuries, snippets of the conversation I'd overheard. I mailed it the next morning. 3 days later, I was called to Kaufman's office. "Nurse Weaver," he said, my letter unfolded on the desk before him. "Would you care to explain this?" My blood ran cold. "How did you—" "Silent Hill is a small town," he interrupted. "People look out for their own." The post office clerk recognized the CPS address. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Fortunately, she brought it to me instead. "Child abuse is a crime," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I was doing my duty as a mandated reporter. "Your duty," he repeated, the word dripping with contempt. "Your duty, Nurse Weaver, is to this hospital, to patient confidentiality, to the chain of command." He stood, looming over the desk. "You've violated all 3. Dr. Kaufman, please!" "You're fired, effective immediately. Clear out your locker and leave your keycard at security." I stood my ground. "I'll go to the police. I'll tell them everything I've seen." His laugh cut me off. "By all means. Tell Sheriff Gucci that the respected Dr. Kaufman and the pious Mrs. Gillespie are involved in some bizarre conspiracy. See how far that gets you." He was right, of course. In a town like Silent Hill, where certain families had roots going back centuries, an outsider like me would never be believed. I cleaned out my locker with shaking hands. In my haste to leave, I nearly collided with someone in the corridor, Lisa Garland, the head nurse of the medical ward. Older than me by a few years, blonde, beautiful in a fragile way. There were rumors about her and Kaufman, though I'd never put much stock in hospital gossip. "Careful," she said, steadying me. Her eyes were slightly unfocused, her pupils pinpricks. I recognized the signs: White Claudia, the local designer drug that had been making its way through town. "You're Sylvia, right? From pediatrics?" "Not anymore," I said bitterly. "I've been fired." A flash of clarity in her eyes. "What happened?" I hesitated, then decided I had nothing left to lose. "I reported suspected abuse. Alessa Gillespie." Lisa's expression changed, something like fear flickering across her features. "You shouldn't have done that." She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Stay away from the Gillespies. Stay away from their church. For your own good, Sylvia." Then she was gone, hurrying down the corridor with unsteady steps. I should have listened, should have left town that very night. But I couldn't abandon Alessa, not yet. For the next few months, I tried everything I could think of to help her. I called CPS and Brahms directly. They had no record of any previous reports concerning Alessa Gillespie and promised to investigate, but nothing came of it. I went to the local school, hoping to speak with her teachers, only to learn she was homeschooled by her mother. I even attempted to approach her once, when I saw her alone in the town library, but she shied away from me like a frightened animal. "They're watching," she whispered, before fleeing between the stacks of books. I found work at a small diner on the outskirts of town, the only place willing to hire me after word spread of my dismissal from the hospital. I rented a cheap apartment near Toluca Lake and considered my options. Without proof, without allies, there seemed little I could do for Alessa. Then came the fire. I learned about it like everyone else in Silent Hill, waking to the sound of sirens in the night, the sky over the old residential district glowing orange. By morning, the news had spread. The Gillespie house had burned to the ground. Dahlia had escaped, but her daughter was presumed dead, her body too badly burned to be recovered. The guilt was overwhelming. I had known something terrible would happen, had sensed the danger surrounding Alessa, and I had failed to save her, failed to keep my silent promise to help. I gave my notice at the diner that day. There was nothing left for me in Silent Hill, only painful memories and a failure that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I planned to leave town by the end of the week, to start over somewhere new, somewhere I could try to forget. 3 days after the fire, as I was packing my meager belongings, a strange fog began to roll in from Toluca Lake. Thicker than any fog I'd seen before, it swallowed the town in a matter of hours. The radio began issuing warnings: stay indoors, keep windows and doors locked. An emergency of some kind, though the nature of it was unclear. I continued packing, determined to leave as soon as the fog cleared. But as night fell, the sirens began again. Not fire sirens this time, but air raid sirens, their wail rising and falling in a way that raised the hair on the back of my neck. The power went out. In the sudden darkness, my battery-powered radio sprang to life of its own accord, emitting static that formed patterns, almost like words. I leaned closer, straining to hear. "Sylvia? Help me." A child's voice barely audible through the interference. A voice I recognized. "Alessa," I whispered into the darkness, the static change pitch forming 3 distinct words. "Hospital. Basement. Please." I should have been terrified, should have dismissed it as a hallucination born of guilt and grief. Instead, I felt a surge of hope. If there was even the slightest chance Alessa was alive, that I could still help her. I grabbed my coat and a flashlight and ventured out into the fog. Silent Hill had changed. The familiar streets were empty, the fog limiting visibility to just a few yards ahead. The pavement beneath my feet was cracked and stained, as though decades of neglect had occurred overnight. Pieces of paper swirled in the air, flyers, newspaper clippings, personal notes, all related to missing children, to religious ceremonies, to sacrifices. I made my way toward Alchemilla Hospital, a journey that should have taken 15 minutes but stretched into what felt like hours. The fog seemed to shift and swirl with purpose, sometimes revealing paths, sometimes concealing them. More than once I heard sounds in the mist, shuffling footsteps, labored breathing, the scrape of metal on concrete, but saw nothing when I turned to look. Alchemilla Hospital loomed out of the fog like a specter, its facade grimy and decayed. The main entrance doors hung askew on broken hinges. Inside, the reception area was abandoned, papers scattered across the floor, gurneys overturned in the hallways. The elevators were dead, the stairwell doors locked. But I knew the hospital well enough to find another way down. A service elevator at the back, used for transporting supplies and, occasionally, bodies to the morgue. It responded to my call, the doors sliding open with a groan of protesting metal. The interior was stained with something dark and viscous that I refused to examine too closely. I pressed the button for the basement, and the elevator descended with a jerk that nearly sent me to my knees. The basement corridor was lit by flickering fluorescent lights that cast more shadows than illumination. The walls were damp, covered in patches of something that looked unsettlingly like organic growth. The air was thick with the smell of antiseptic layered over something rotten. I moved cautiously down the hall, my flashlight beam sweeping ahead of me. Most of the doors were locked or blocked by debris, but one stood slightly ajar, a thin line of light spilling out into the corridor. I approached slowly, listening. From beyond the door came a soft, rhythmic sound, a heart monitor, beeping steadily. I pushed the door open. The room beyond was a stark contrast to the decay of the rest of the hospital. Clean, well-lit, equipped with modern medical technology. In the center stood a hospital bed, surrounded by monitoring equipment, and on the bed, my breath caught in my throat. It was Alessa, or what remained of her. Her body was a ruin, charred flesh and exposed bones somehow still sustaining life. Bandages covered most of her form, stained with fluids I didn't want to identify. Only her face was partially visible, and within it, her dark eyes, the same eyes that had haunted me for months. Those eyes fixed on me now, widening with recognition. "You came," she whispered, her voice a rasp of damaged vocal cords. I moved to her bedside, tears blurring my vision. "Alessa, I'm so sorry. I tried to help." "I know." Her bandaged hand twitched, reaching for mine. I took it gently, afraid of causing her more pain. "But it's too late now. The ritual has begun." "Ritual?" I echoed, confusion cutting through my grief. "What ritual?" "My mother's god," she said, each word clearly an effort. "The order believes pain and suffering can summon it. I was the vessel." Horror dawned as I pieced it together. The fire hadn't been an accident. It had been deliberate, part of some twisted religious ceremony. "But you survived," I said. A sound escaped her that might have been a laugh, brittle and hollow. "Part of me did. I split myself. When the flames came, half escaped, the other half." "Is here," came a voice from the doorway. I whirled around. Lisa Garland stood there, her nurse's uniform stained and disheveled, her eyes glazed. Behind her loomed Dr. Kaufman, his face impassive. "Nurse Weaver," he said, as though my presence was merely an inconvenience rather than a trespass. "I should have known you'd find your way back here." "What have you done to her?" I demanded. Lisa's eyes darted to mine, pleading. "I didn't know," she whispered. "They told me she was a burn victim who needed special care. That's all I knew at first." Kaufman's hand clamped down on Lisa's shoulder, making her flinch. "Nurse Garland's duties are to keep the patient stable, nothing more." "This is insane," I said, backing up until I stood protectively beside Alessa's bed. "You're torturing a child." Kaufman sighed, as though dealing with a particularly slow student. "We're midwiving the birth of a god. Alessa is the chosen vessel, has been since before she was born. The fire was merely the conception. What comes next will reshape reality itself." Lisa trembled, her gaze fixed on the floor. "He keeps me here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The drugs, I can't leave, can't stop. He'll cut me off if I don't care for her." A single tear slid down her cheek. "I never wanted this." "You can't possibly believe this," I said to Kaufman. "You're a doctor." "I'm a man of science, yes," he replied calmly. "But I'm also a man who recognizes power when he sees it. The Order has roots in this town that go back centuries. Their god may not match your conception of divinity, but their power is very real." He gestured around us. "Look at what's happening to Silent Hill. The fog, the transformation. That's just the beginning." "The beginning of what?" "Paradise," Lisa whispered. Or hell. Depends on your sins. What's happening to the town? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It's becoming a reflection of my pain, a place where nightmares take physical form. She reached out, her small hand hovering just above my cheek. I need you, Sylvia. Need your compassion, your hands, your knowledge of the hospital. For what? To help me make sure they all feel what I felt. Her eyes were bottomless pits now, wells of darkness that seemed to go on forever. You promised to help me. This is how? I can't, I said, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. I wanted to help you, Alessa, to save you from abuse, from neglect, not to help you hurt others. Even those who deserve it? Her voice had taken on a harder edge. The ones who burned me? Who tortured me? Who used this hospital to continue their experiments even now? Images flashed through my mind, glimpses of other rooms in the basement, other patients. Adults and children subjected to treatments that were nothing short of torture, all in service to the Order's mad god. There are others? I whispered. She nodded. Many, over the years. Some died, some became something else. She gestured to Lisa Garland. Some, like her, were corrupted by their complicity until they became monsters in truth as well as deed. I thought of the children I might have helped if I'd looked harder, asked more questions during my time at Alchemilla. How many Alessas had there been over the years? If I help you, I said slowly, I choose who deserves punishment. No innocence. Her smile was terrible in its childlike sweetness. Of course. I would never hurt the innocent. Only those who have sinned against me and others like me. I knew I was making a deal with something that wasn't entirely Alessa anymore, something older, darker, born of unspeakable suffering. But in that moment, facing the horror of what had been done to her, what was still being done to others in the twisted depths of Alchemilla Hospital, it felt like justice. Yes, I said. I'll help you. Her smile widened, and she reached for my hand. My favorite nurse. The pain began immediately, not like a burn or a cut, but like something foreign being poured into my veins, filling me from within. I saw visions as I fell to my knees. Alessa multiplied across every floor of the hospital, in every room, watching from every shadow. I saw nurses with twisted bodies and faceless heads, moving in jerky, unnatural ways. I saw the town of Silent Hill split between reality and a dark reflection of itself, a place of rust and blood and endless suffering. My skin began to burn and crack, peeling away to reveal something else beneath. Not muscle and bone, but a new skin, gray and mottled, neither living nor dead. My nurse's uniform transformed as well, becoming stained and torn, twisted into a mockery of what it had once represented. Healing perverted into harm, care corrupted into judgment. I tried to scream, but the sound that emerged was a low, inhuman moan. My head jerked on my neck, movements no longer fully under my control. I could feel something covering my face, not a mask, but my skin grown smooth and featureless, sealed over my eyes and mouth and nose. Yet somehow, I could still see, still breathe, still think. Perfect, Alessa whispered, reaching up to touch my new face with gentle fingers. Now, you'll always be my nurse, Sylvia. My favorite nurse. That was before. I don't know how long ago. Time works differently in Silent Hill now, especially in the hospital. I patrol the halls of Alchemilla, my body moving with that distinctive broken rhythm that all the nurses share. But unlike the others, unlike what Lisa Garland became, I retain more of my consciousness, more of my will. A gift from Alessa, or perhaps a curse. I can choose to some extent how I use this monstrous form she's given me. When the fog draws new visitors to Silent Hill, and it always does, calling to those with darkness in their hearts, I can distinguish between the truly guilty and those merely caught in the town's web. For those who have committed actual crimes against children, who have hurt or exploited the innocent, I am an instrument of Alessa's vengeance. My hands remember their medical training, but now they use that knowledge to inflict precisely calibrated suffering rather than healing. But for others, those whose guilt is more nebulous, or who came to Silent Hill by tragic chance, I sometimes find ways to guide them to safer paths. A flickering light at the end of a corridor that leads away from danger. A door left conspicuously unlocked. A momentary hesitation in my attack that gives them time to escape. I've encountered others like me, souls bound to the service of Alessa and the dark power she now embodies. Some were once doctors, nurses, orderlies. Others were patients. All of us transformed into manifestations of Silent Hill's judgment. The fog comes and goes. When it lifts, the town appears normal to outsiders, decayed and largely abandoned perhaps, but ordinary. When it descends, the other world bleeds through, and Silent Hill becomes a nightmare landscape of rust and blood and writhing darkness. I exist in both versions, though my form is different in each. In the fog world, I am the monster, the nurse with the featureless face and twisted limbs. In the real world, I am almost myself again, almost Sylvia, though with a grayish pallor to my skin and eyes that reflect no light. Dahlia Gillespie returned to the hospital once, months or years after my transformation. I sensed her presence immediately, a burning point of hatred in Alessa's consciousness that bled over into mine. I found her in the chapel, praying before an altar stained with old blood. She recognized me, despite my changed appearance. "Another of my daughter's pets," she said, showing no fear. "Has she sent you to kill me?" I couldn't speak, not with my mouth sealed over, but I shook my head slowly. "No," she mused, "she wouldn't. I'm still needed for what comes next. The god may sleep within her, but the birth is yet to come." She smiled, the expression ghastly on her gaunt face. "Tell my daughter her mother still loves her, still believes in her sacred role." I left her there, though every fiber of my transformed being screamed to tear her. But Alessa's will constrained me. Dahlia would face judgment, but not yet. Not until everything was complete. Others come to Silent Hill now, drawn by the fog, by letters they think were written by dead loved ones, by guilt that festers in their souls. Some find their way to the hospital, where I and my sisters wait for them. Not all deserve punishment. I can sense that now, can feel the weight of their sins or the lightness of their innocence. For the innocent, I am a shadow glimpsed at the end of a hallway, a warning moan that sends them in the opposite direction. But for the guilty, those who have harmed people, who have looked away when they should have acted, who have caused suffering through action or inaction, I am what Alessa made me, a nightmare in a nurse's uniform, a twisted caregiver whose hands bring only pain. Sometimes, in the quietest moments when the fog is thick and the sirens are silent, I wonder if I made the right choice. If there could have been another way to honor my promise to help Alessa. If this eternal half-life of judgment and violence is truly justice, or merely vengeance without end. But those thoughts don't last long. Silent Hill doesn't allow for doubt or redemption, only judgment. I hear footsteps in the corridor outside, hesitant, fearful. Another visitor to Silent Hill, another soul to be weighed. My head jerks to one side, neck cracking with the sudden movement. My body twitches, preparing to move toward the sound. And somewhere, in every corner of the hospital, in every shadow of the town, I feel Alessa watching, waiting, judging. I am her instrument now, her favorite nurse, and I will help her make sure they all feel what she felt.